what I wanted to ask the panel was, given the extraordinary scenes that we've seen this year of videos, we need to be looking at protecting our social licence to operate. And I wanted to ask them what they feel we need to do to see a way forward. Ben.
Okay, where do we start with this? So, do you know how you guys didn't want to talk about this? No, I think it's not a bad thing that we've seen different videos from different disciplines. And I'm going to say that again. We've seen different videos from different disciplines. It's not just dressage. We've seen it in jumping, I've seen carriage driving, we've seen all sorts. And I think it's a good thing that we're trying to make people aware that there is malpractice happening and that it should be stopped. I think that's absolutely true. What I think we need to be careful of is not taking on the same personality traits of those we disapprove of when dealing with those who are in the wrong. So, when we think of people who have made great change in the world, look at Gandhi. He didn't fight against the oppression with the same way that they were oppressed. You can't fight hate with hate, it just makes more hate. And one thing that worries me is I think how you treat anybody is how you will treat everybody when you let your guard down. And some of the ways that I see people on social media treat one another makes me worry how they would treat animals when left alone. Because it's not a far cry from one, a bully is a bully, and someone that takes great pleasure in bullying up another person, I really don't see how that wouldn't leak into other aspects of their lives, and I don't even think it's deliberate. And I think we just need to be so careful with that, yes, do not ignore things that are wrong. I want to see change, but I'm much more concerned about the conversation about what we do next than what has happened. Because that's a conversation we don't seem to hear or have very often. It's always revisiting the same issues, revisiting the same thing, trying to, hang, draw and quarter the same people. And I don't think that helps, and I also don't think that's the best way to help a person change. Nobody that's made me feel small, insignificant, stupid and vile has made me change my life. People that have been compassionate, caring, and gentle with me have. And I think that's a very important thing. I'd also like to say, and I know this could be a bit controversial, but I don't think it should be. I think we have to be careful not to live in an echo chamber of apocalyptic negativity. Because if I ask any of you what the issue is, you'd all say dressage. I went to America and started this conversation. They couldn't believe that anybody has a problem with dressage. It's eventing. If you go to Australia, it's jump racing. And so I think we need to be careful that we don't make it seem worse than it is to the general public, because the general public get exposed to it by, fanning all those flames and stuff. And please never misconstrue that saying I don't want to see change. I want to see so much change, but it's how we go about it. And also, another thing is, I think it's important. I don't think we're in that much trouble with the social licensing thing. I've spent the last 3 days on the phone to Britain's Got Talent, having them beg me to go on with the horses. I'm not going on. It doesn't interest me. It really doesn't.
He will, however, be taking his top off soon. Don't worry, guys.
But do you think that a big multinational company that makes millions, billions like that would want to put horses front and centre stage if they thought the public didn't like it? I also know that there are companies, big brands working on brand new products that don't exist in the equine market, that they're investing 200-300 million into, that are going to be launching in the next year. Do you think they'd be doing that? So I don't think we need to worry for our enjoyment of horses, but I do think we need to worry about what we do next. And that should be the conversation about how we can, maybe us as adults, maybe we're screwed. But how do we make sure that those people coming out of Pony Club, that those kids growing up at the riding clubs and the riding schools, how do we make sure that they do better than we have? And I think that should be the conversation.
So I think that we've got two things that we have to address. I think that we have social licensing, which is about your general public. And then I think we have the issue within our industry, which is what actually feeds out into the general public as well. So if we immerse ourselves in negativity and we only look for what is wrong, that is what goes out into the wider world. That is what your journalists pick up on, and it's what comes around again and again. And I really see this as an opportunity to be better and to move forward, with the emphasis on moving forward. I think that we have to be better communicators. I think we have to be willing to be transparent. I want to feel like somebody can walk onto my yard and watch me riding my horses, and I could have a discussion with them about what I was doing and why. And they still might not agree with it, because they might, but I would want to feel like I could justify it honestly and truly and communicate that in a positive way. And I think in terms of, we need to get out there the fact that our horses, well, no, let's start a little bit earlier than that. I mean, you have horses, everybody here has horses, because you love them. And, when people, there are bad things that get done. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. But most of the time, it is a lack of education and understanding that lead to people making mistakes. So I think we really have to try and pull together and try and improve knowledge and understanding to help move things forward. And then in terms of, the social license to the wider world, we have to make people realise how much our horses love to do what they do. Not how much we love doing it with our horses, but what our horses enjoy. And, we had a funny conversation yesterday, in the sense that I think we have to, again, it's about education. And, I am incredibly lucky with my horse Bomb, because he is the epitome of a happy athlete. He goes round that test like, guys, this is great. I'm so happy to be here. Clap louder. And, he loves it. But I have other horses that have what one would refer to as a resting bitch face. And, it's not that they are not enjoying what they're doing. They just don't go round with their ears forward all the time and looking super happy about life. But they're still focused. They're in tune. Actually, their ears are here, there, and everywhere, because they're thinking about what I'm asking them. And, we have to educate people that a horse with the ear not in the perfectly forward position is not necessarily an unhappy horse. And, I think that's... We have to show those stories. We have to tell that. That is what we have to try and put out there and help people understand. And, I think that Ben has already said it, but I'm going to say it even clearer. We need to quit with the negativity. We need to think about trying to be more positive. And, that negativity on social media and things, it does nobody any good. It doesn't do our sport any good. And I don't mean my sport in dressage, I mean equestrianism as a whole. And there's always going to be people that do it, but we have to try and rise above it and be positive and look at what we're going to improve through education, through training, to help our horses and help people understand what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I'd say step one is don't be part of the problem. So don't be one of the people who could be videoed doing something inappropriate, and I'm pretty sure no one here's in that case. But the other thing I want to reiterate what these guys said is how social media works, whatever, and actually how the world works, is whatever you put energy into grows. And if you put energy into negativity on the internet, the people who don't know anything about horses will just see, those things will rise to the top. And I like to, the saying, think globally but act locally. I have people who say, oh, there's a person in my yard and they're doing, they're doing it all wrong with their horse. They should be doing it differently. How do I tell them? I say, you don't tell them. you do what you do with your horse, and you do it so well that they're leaning over the fence going, hey, can I ask you a question? How did you get your horse to do that? You know, lead by example. Like Ben said, he's never learnt anything from anybody who's trying to belittle him. You know, you've got one chance to open lines of communication with other people, and being negative is not the way to do it. But really think about social media. Is your bitching and moaning about a post that comes up on social media, is your negativity actually going to do any good, or is it all it's going to do is just put that thing to the top of the page so it's seen more? So if you know, I think it's a quote by one of the Stoics, but it's about, you know, don't put any energy into anything you have no control over. And I would say, you know, stick to what you have control over, and you know, spread that magic around everywhere, and just lead by example.
And also remember that you learn sometimes by making mistakes, and that is such an important part of it. And, you know, I struggle, and I talk about this quite a bit, because I don't do a huge amount on social media. What I do tends to be lighthearted and stupid, and my horse writes a very extensive blog, which I read the day he started writing, because it takes me a lot of time to translate what he says. But, you know, I get frustrated because I don't feel like I can be as honest as I want to be, because I am a professional, and it is deemed by many people that I should be perfect at all times. And I would really love to be able to show that sometimes it isn't perfect, you know, and sometimes I do a change that is late behind. Not a bit late behind. This is a story from yesterday. Or, you know, that I'm having to work my horse a little bit too round over its back. The poll is not the highest point. The nose is not perfectly forward. But if I ride the horse with its poll up and its nose out, it's hollow through its back and not where I want it to be. So I put it a little bit more round to help get the horse to engage its core and work better through its body. It's not in roll cur. It might be a little bit behind the vertical, etc. But, you know, that is... I can't do that, because if I do that, I get absolutely pulled to bits. And I find it sad and frustrating, because I think with the, you know, young people and anybody in our sport, when you see only perfection, you have standards that are too high. You need to see that all of us have problems and all of us have struggles. And, you know, I would really like a world where we felt like we could do that a little bit more. And, you know, me making a mistake could help somebody else to not make that mistake, or to realise that it's not a big deal if you make that mistake, because mistakes are how you learn. So, you know, it is... I just think that's such an important part, and it's important to understand that you make mistakes and it's okay, and your horse makes mistakes and it's okay. You work through it and you improve them and you make it better. But without mistakes, you don't learn.
I'd just like to sort of tag on to the end of that as well. We talk about that idea of making mistakes. You train a horse, the horse can make mistakes, and so can you. Do you know? It can happen both ways. And good horse training is making a plan, trying it, it fails miserably, so you go back to the drawing board, you make a new plan, and you try again. And every time you try and it doesn't work out the way you want it to, you sort of adapt. You see what's gone on in front of you. Do you know, the same way you would if you were running a business. Do you know, trying to sell something, you do an advertising campaign, it works or it doesn't, and you tweak accordingly. We've tried crucifying riders and going angry, and it's not blummin' worked. Think about that. We've done anger and outrage, and it's changed nothing, has it? So we need to think of something better. We need to use the minds that we use to train our horses to try and change these, whether it's the organisations, whether it's the rules, whether it's the general feeling. And I think stuff, people talk about this trickle-down effect. I think we all know that doesn't blummin' work. But it can grow up as well. If all of us at the lowest level from absolute grassroots up try to be as impeccable as possible, and call ourselves out and try to improve, then anybody who's not on the ship's going to look ridiculous. So we can change this world, but we have to change how we're trying to do it, because we've gone one way and we've all seen how it's turned out and nothing's really changed and it's not really worked. So we need to adapt and try something else. And I think that's the only way we're going to grow and move forward.